Ready? So good evening. Thank you for coming to the 2026 Candidates Night, sponsored by the Southborough Library Board of Trustees. I'm Janet Maney. I'm on the board, and I'd like to introduce the other trustees who are in attendance tonight. Marguerite, who has two hats. She is our chair. Also a candidate for re-election is Amy Yazdani, who is hiding, and Jane Davis. There we go, in the back. And Mary Tinty, who is here. And she's also representing the Friends of the Library, which is our fundraising group. And she'll be at a table over here able to answer questions and talk about the Friends after all the events of the evening. I'd like to recognize Ryan, who was just talking, our library director. He's put a lot of effort into coordinating this event. And the library staff who did the setup and will be carrying on functions up front, so we try to keep respect for, there's actually people looking in the stacks during this as well. And I'd like to thank Roach Brothers this year and the library trustees for both providing refreshments. So the town election will be held on May 12th, 6:30 in the morning till 8 at night at the Trotter School Gymnasium, and you have to register to vote by May 1st. Looking at this crowd, I think you've all been registered for a while. So we only have one contested race this year and 3 candidates for the 2 seats. But I'd first like to recognize the candidates for uncontested seats who have bothered to come tonight so we can see their faces. We have Denise Eddy, who is running for a regional school committee and was on the Southborough School Committee before that. Okay. We have Tom Prong, who is running for the planning board. Yes. And we also have Kelly Coughlin, who is running for the Southborough School Committee. I forgot to mention David Eckberg, who's on the Board of Trustees, who is also here, sorry. So, instead of going right to the candidates, I wanted to, because there's 4 ballot questions that I think people have a lot of questions about, so I asked Kathy Cook from the Select Board to come. Oh, she can come here.
Okay.
She can to explain and answer any good questions on the 4 ballot questions. There's also, I don't know if people picked them up, there's copies of the specimen ballots that are in the back of the room that have the questions on them. And if people want to, I can get some and hand them out or whatever. Kathy, you want to take it away? I'm sure anybody at the front table could also have answered these questions, but it seemed more fair to have some objective.
I'm sure they could have, Janet. So I'm getting over a cold, so ignore my voice and probably my cough. Okay, so to try to boil this down to something that's easy to understand, if you attended the March 2nd special town meeting and the April 11th annual town meeting, the town meetings approved 4 significant capital projects. 2 new roofs, one for Neary and one for Trotter, and then $25 million for a bond to basically really try to fix the roads once and for all and add 4 new sidewalks. Okay? So state law limits the amount of real estate taxes that can be assessed each year as far as the overall limit, and then it provides the amount that you can increase them from year to year. So everyone's probably heard the term Prop 2.5. So the 2.5 is 2.5%. So overall, excluding new growth, excluding anything else, you can only increase the cap on real estate taxes by 2.5% a year. The problem with that is when you have a big capital project like these 4, you can't fit the debt service within that increase, and so the state law allows for things like capital projects that are either paid for up front or financed by debt to be excluded from that overall cap each year. However, it's got to be approved. You can't just do it. You have to have the vote to actually do that. So the first step is to go to town meeting, get the projects approved. If they're debt financed, which these 4 were, you have to have a 2/3 vote. We got that, and the next step is to put the debt exclusions on the ballot for May 12th. So you're not actually approving the project, although indirectly, if you don't like the project, you could vote against the debt exclusion. What you're approving is that the debt service for these 4 projects can be added to the overall real estate tax cap that we have to abide by each year. Now, the cap stays in place until the projects are paid off, so it's not permanent. So once the debt service goes away, then the cap will come back down. So we need a positive vote. It's a 50% vote on this one on May 12th to be able to continue with these projects. So until the second vote takes place, the projects won't happen. So we're hoping that, Select Board hopes that everyone will vote yes on the 4 debt exclusion projects.
Does anyone, it is confusing. Does anyone have questions? No? Okay.
Clear as mud?
What is, so given all those debt exclusions and the traditional increase in property taxes, best guess for tax increase next year?
Fiscal year 27?
Yes.
Okay, so we already know what it is. So, I mean, this has already been factored in. We assume they're going to pass as far as president of the town. So 4.6% is what we think today. However, and this is important, so this is a little bit of inside baseball. The town employees are now going to pick their health plan for fiscal year 27 in the month of May. That starts on Friday. If they pick a new plan that is being offered, which is a high deductible health plan with an HSA, if every single employee that's on the current plan were to pick that, we would save another $700,000, so it would come down to about a 3.2% year-over-year increase. So we are encouraging employees to really look at that plan. It's good for them, it's great for the town, so it could come down from the 4.6 to something just above 3 if every single person were to pick that high deductible health plan.
And what was the estimate on our tax increase when we were here last year?
Over 7.6 or so.
And what did it actually come out to be?
About that. So it ended up being a little bit more than what we had projected when we did the annual town meeting.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi, everyone. It's Ryan again. I just wanted to let anybody know if people have questions when we're doing the question and answer, we have this mic stand set up. And this just makes it easier for everybody to hear, especially depending on where you are in the room. Okay? So just, if that's okay, use the mic. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. So we are ready for the candidates for Select Board, who are Marguerite Landry, Sam Stivers, and Andrew Pfaff. But we're actually going to do our presentations in alphabetical order, which I did not just do. So each is going to give a 3-minute introduction, and then after that we'll go to questions. Anyone who has a question, all 3 candidates will answer. So, and we keep keep questions hopefully succinct and answers to 2 minutes-ish. Okay. Andrew?
Doesn't L come before P?
We don't. First name or last names?
Oh, I'm sorry, Marguerite. Back to school.
Is this mic working? Now is it working?
No, I got it. Yeah, sorry, everyone, one more announcement, and I swear this will be the last one. Just got to get close to the mic when you're talking, and it will pick you up. I promise.
So now it's working? Yes. A little disconcerting, but okay. My name is Marguerite Landry. I will do a quick bio. I've lived in Southborough since 1992. I arrived here as a single parent with 1 child, and I was broke, basically. So I know what it's like to worry about your financial situation, because I did. I've served on the Southborough Youth Commission for Youth and Family Services. I've been on the Public Accessibility Committee, which is ensuring ADA compliance. I'm on the Library Board of Trustees. I'm currently the chair of this fabulous group. I was on the ad hoc committee to create Heritage Park, which was is right now and right behind you and very nice, I think. I'm currently the vice chair of the Select Board. I serve on the Parish Council of St. Zenargary Greek Orthodox Church in Marlborough, and I was 6 years on the Board of Directors for Holy Trinity Nursing and Rehabilitation Center in Worcester, where I co-chaired the investment committee that handled was responsible for an endowment of $14 million, which we took care of. I am a retired professor from the English department at Fitchburg State, and I taught professional writing. And I've also taught at Hunter College in the city of New York and Bronx Community College and NYU. My son attended Southborough schools, and he's gone on to become a professor himself, in large part, I think, due to the excellent education he received here in Southborough. As a select board member, I have worked hard to listen to residents and to understand their concerns about taxes and the impact on neighborhoods of development. I definitely support careful growth that residents want in this town. I will work hard, continue to work hard for fiscal transparency about the decisions that are being made. I very much encourage resident input into decision-making. And again, I will work for better communication between residents and boards and town government and town departments. I think at this point, we're at a really nice place in Southborough. We have very efficient departments that are functioning well. We are looking at our taxes, but there are a couple of places where we really kind of need to do some work. One of them has to do with funding our retirement system for our employees. That's going to need some looking at because it's sort of been kicked down the road for a few years. That I'm concerned with, and I would like to have dialogue with residents to see how they would like to solve this problem. We also have to renovate Neary School at some point. Again, this has been a long and complicated discussion, and I think we need to gather residents together to see what they are willing to pay in their taxes and what they think would be an adequate solution to the problem of Neary. So stabilizing our taxes, and basically, I learned from the last town meeting that residents will vote to spend money if they're getting something for it that they really want. And in this case, it was roads, and the DPW had made clear which roads would be changed and which sidewalks would go in. And I think what happened was that residents said, yes, we want that, we are willing to pay for that. And I think that was a successful budget question, and it taught me that people don't just say no to every single tax increase they get. They will say yes if they really want what they're getting for the money. So that was something I learned from that. I think the employee health insurance costs are skyrocketing, like all of our health insurance costs, and that's something else that's going to need town-wide cooperation to decide how to solve this problem. And there's also questions about regionalizing some of our services, and we have to talk about whether the town wants to do that or not. We are regionalizing the emergency dispatch. There's questions about regionalizing other departments, and I think that's a discussion the whole town needs to join. And I think the most important thing looking at us right now, and then I'll be done, is that we've got a huge property that's opening up south of Route 9, and we have to decide what we want to see there, how we want it zoned, what kind of businesses or open space or whatever we want there. And I think that we need to discuss this before we're reacting to something coming in that we don't really want to have. So that, I think, that and Neary School are the two most pressing issues I think the town is facing right now. And I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Andrew, I think we can go on a little bit longer than
Good evening, and thank you all for being here, and thank you to the library staff and library board of trustees for hosting us this evening. My name is Andrew Pfaff, and I'm running for a seat on the Southborough Select Board. Southborough has been my home since I was 10 months old. I grew up here, went to our schools, and today my wife and Annie are raising our daughter here in the same community that has given me so much. Like many of you, this town isn't just where I live, it's part of who I am. I'm running because Southborough is at an important moment and a critical juncture in its history. We're facing rising costs, a possible override, declining state aid, aging infrastructure, and increasing pressure on our aging schools. The decisions we make now will shape our town for years to come, and we need to approach them with discipline, clarity, and long-term thinking. Over the past several years, I've served on the advisory committee including many years as chair, where I've worked closely on our town's budget and town meeting articles. I've also served in various other committees, including capital planning, school building committees, helping oversee major investments in long-term projects. I'm also the chair of the Fairview Lake YMCA Board of Directors and a member of the Metropolitan YMCA of the Oranges Board of Managers. And through that experience, I've seen something very important. Too often, by the time issues reach the advisory committee, many of the key decisions have already been made, reducing our ability to affect change. I'm running for select board to help bring a more proactive, data-driven approach earlier into the process to focus on root causes, improve transparency, and strengthen how decisions are made from the start. In my professional career, I lead company-wide strategic initiatives at Santander Bank, focusing on budgeting, planning, organizational transformation, and solving complex challenges. That experience has taught me to make tough decisions, balance priorities, stay focused on long-term results. If elected, my priorities are straightforward: strong financial stewardship, supporting our schools responsibly, thoughtful growth that enables commercial development, and thus lowering the reliance on residential taxpayers, all while preserving Southborough's character. And that includes practical housing solutions, expanding affordable housing, and creating opportunities for seniors to stay in town, leveraging state and federal funding to reduce the burden on taxpayers. I also believe strongly in transparency, communication, and collaboration. Residents deserve to understand not just what decisions are being made, but why. This election is an opportunity to bring a fresh perspective to the select board, grounded in real experience and a lifelong commitment to this community. I would be honored to earn your support. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Sam Stivers, for those of you who don't know me. Thanks to the library trustees, Ryan, library staff for hosting this event. It's a great opportunity to talk about something that's important for the town. I want to start by talking about why I'm running for another term of the select board. I tell people I'm running for the money. I can't afford to live on my day job salary. But in all seriousness, I care a lot about Southborough's future, and I want to help retain and enhance the great things about this town that make us all want to live here. I believe I can help town government be more effective. My management, financial skills, and experience can help provide better value for our tax dollars. I bring an independent, objective view to town issues. I pay careful attention to the interests of the residents most affected by these issues. And particularly, there are a number of important things that were started during my previous terms on the select board that I'd like to help get accomplished. Things like relief from the residential property tax increases that we've seen, some infrastructure issues, some of the regionalization issues that we're looking at. When I ran for this position previously, I promised the voters several things, including I'd show up for work and devote the time required to do the job properly. I'd remain independent, impartial, and free of conflict of interest. I'd look beyond business as usual and find opportunities and solutions to problems that we're facing. I'd pay close attention to longer-term planning, and I'd welcome and listen to citizen input on town issues. And as many of you know, I spend a lot of time on Saturdays at the transfer station talking to people, and I've gotten a real earful over the years of what people are concerned about and interested in, which I think has been a very valuable experience for many reasons. And if elected, I plan to continue that. I believe I've delivered on all these promises, and if I'm elected, I'll continue to do so. I see mostly familiar faces in here, but for those few who may not know me, I'll provide a brief summary of my background. I'm a Southborough resident since 1997. My career has been, I started life as a teacher for 6 years. I was a management consultant for 25 plus years, and a manager in the healthcare business for the last 20 plus years. Today I'm working for an AI, artificial intelligence startup, which is an interesting change of pace and pretty exciting stuff. I've served on the select board, advisory committee, zoning board, and at least a dozen other local and regional committees. And all of that service has given me a real insight in terms of what goes on in town finances, town business operations, etc. So I think that experience allows me to hit the ground running on this at a high speed. I'd like to talk about what I'd like to plan to focus on as a select board member. I'd like to develop strategies for relieving the fiscal pressures that we've heard talked about so much. Things like improved cost efficiency, commercial tax revenue, doing something about our OPEB pension liabilities, which are substantial. I want to address some of the significant infrastructure issues like roads, stormwater systems, and working with the school committee and administration to deal with the capital issues that schools is facing at this point. They manage that, but it hits the budget, and we all need to work together on that. I want to improve coordination between town departments and committees and boards. I want to create additional housing opportunities, particularly for seniors and new families who want to come to town. And I want to support improved cultural, social, open space, recreational amenities as described in the master plan and the town's open space and recreation plan. Long list of things. Part of the challenge of the job is you've got to balance those priorities and come up with reasonable solutions. And I have experience in doing that, and I want the opportunity to continue to do that. So I ask for your support and for your vote on May 12th. Thank you.
Mike. Here we go. Thank you. Do we have questions for the candidates? Here's one. Since she had the mic,
So I have a question for Marguerite and for Sam. You've both been on the select board before. I'd like to know, I know you did say some priorities, but I'd like to know whether these items came up in the past, and if they did, what did you do about them? And why didn't you achieve them? What were the obstacles? And how are you going to get past those obstacles this time?
Can I just remind everyone that any question that comes in, all three will answer.
Oh, Andrew, you were on advisory, so you know.
Yeah,
it's a little
I'm sure he's
different
aware.
perspective.
He does
Not
go
my
through
name.
this.
Am I supposed to say my name and address?
You don't have to.
Okay.
So who would like to
I'll jump
speak first?
So basically, you're asking a very understandable question. If we have all these lovely ideas, why aren't they all reality yet, right? Am I right? It's a slow process. However, I like to think that things have improved since I was a select person. One of the things am I supposed to repeat the question again?
Not since we have a microphone.
Okay, all right, anyway, sorry, Terry. Anyway, I think one of the things is, in terms of the tax write-off for seniors or people with disabilities or people who just don't have enough money who want to do the tax write-off, there have been two changes since I was on. One is more dissemination of information about what is possible, right? And also that the town treasurer is now working, if a person has a home and they want to stay in it and they can't make their tax nut, then there are options for them where the town essentially becomes their banker off the value of their house, and then when the house is finally sold, the town is repaid for what it's allowed to do. And I think Brian Valentine has organized that, and I think that's two that I think of as successful changes in the last 3 years.
My turn? Okay, thanks. Clearly, as Marguerite says, it's a frustratingly slow process, particularly for someone like myself who comes from the private sector, where you say, we're going to do this, and things start to happen. Here, if we're going to do this, you form a committee and go to town meeting and debate it for several years. But I think we have made some interesting progress. I look at, for example, at the roads that we just spent $25 million for. I will take some credit for actually starting that process at least 3 or 4 years ago, where I proposed that we do the road scan that Bill kind of talked about. There are many towns who do this. Lexington actually did this about 10 years ago. They claim they save about $500,000 a year because they're doing more preventative maintenance. But we hired a company to put a laser on a car, drive around town, scan the roads, categorize, evaluate every 20 feet road segment there, determine its condition, and then use that in a mathematical model to say, if we have $1 million to spend, where do we spend it to get the most improvement in the road condition overall? And Bill now has that plan, and this $25 million that we just voted to approve at town meeting, 5 years, $5 million a year roughly, is the start of that process to be, I think, a lot smarter about doing more preventative maintenance, and let the whole process of the worst first model, if it totally deteriorates, then you go and rebuild the whole road. do it. You built very few roads and fixed very few potholes that way. So that's a big progress. On the housing side, I think we've made great progress in terms of recreating, restructuring SHOPSI and the Affordable Housing Trust. We now have a new Affordable Housing Trust group that has some very capable people on it. It used to be the select board members who didn't know a whole lot about housing, with the exception of Mr. Hamilton back there. But the group now, I think, has real expertise, and Mr. Hamilton's still on it, to find a way to break loose some of that money that we've been sitting on for 15, 20 years. They've got now close to $1 million. They're looking at ways to leverage that and actually build some housing that is affordable for people. So I think that's a good example of progress. And I could list a few more, but I won't. So again, slow progress, but you take opportunities when you can get them.
Okay, I'll try to answer it because it's a little bit different for me, but I think to elaborate a little bit on what Marguerite was talking about, like the tax work-off, for instance, myself and Mr. Hamilton and some of the town staff were responsible for a lot of the policies in town. So on the senior tax work-off that just approved by the select board, I was the one that proposed creating a proxy ability, which other towns have, which if somebody is physically unable to do the senior tax work-off, they can have somebody do it for them. So even though I was on the select board, I added value where I could, but I have been having an ongoing list of ideas that I haven't fronted back of ones that if on the select board I would like to implement. So there's a lot of things that I'd be looking to do in the future, but in the background of some of the things that get done, I certainly have my fingerprints here and there.
I love youthful enthusiasm.
Anyone else? Yep. If you go to the mic, that would be helpful, because we're recording this.
Okay, recording. Okay.
If that wasn't clear, Sam is recording this. It's not going out live, but it can be watched by people later, so it's easier if everything goes through the mic.
So, all of you mentioned about a slow process. So, next time when we meet, will we hear it again? Who owns this process, and how can we fix this process?
It is a slow process, and one of the costs of that is that it takes time to get things done, but one of the benefits is there is a lot of participation potentially there. Committees have meetings, public has an opportunity to weigh in, ask questions, propose different approaches, etc. That's part of the democracy tug and pull here, and you'd like to be able to do it faster, but some things, for example, are driven by state law. Town meeting has to approve budgets. So if you want to spend money, in my day job, if I want to spend money, I can say, we'll spend this money, and it happens very quickly. Here, you got to wait for the next town meeting to get the money allocated. And a lot of things can happen between a good idea and town meeting. So there's some internal structural issues that you've got to deal with from a legal standpoint to get things done, and that tends to slow the process substantially.
So realistically speaking, how much will you actually accomplish? What the list that you have?
Well, I gave you 2 examples of things that we've accomplished in the last couple of years here. And there are others. Regionalization I didn't mention. We've made substantial progress. We're regionalizing our emergency communication system, which used to be just us. Now it's going to be us, Westborough, and Grafton, with a new center in Westborough. It dramatically increases public safety by having more people to answer those 911 calls. And also may save us a little bit of money, but that's not why we did it particularly. But again, that took a couple of years to get moving. You needed a state grant for that. That took some time to get that approved as well. But that's progress, and that's the kind of thing that you got to start and keep pushing on to get done. So,
Thank you.
Okay. Marguerite or Andrew, do you want to?
I think that's a really good question, because it does seem to take forever. Part of that is the fact that the state and the federal government mandate so many regulations on any change in a municipality that even to change a simple bylaw, it gets voted, it gets discussed, it goes to council, it goes to the attorney general, the legislature sits on it for a while, and something where if you had your own business, you'd say, do it. Here it has to go through a ton of vetting, and then it'll go to the state, and then it'll take forever. And one example of that is Parkerville Road, all right, was repaved. And it wasn't repaved when we were ready to repave it. but the gas company was doing some work at the tail end of it, and they were not allowed to continue until a permit had been issued by the state, right? So you couldn't complete the road. You didn't want to do it and then rip it up again and do the gas. So the gas company is waiting for the state to issue a permit, and I think it's more than a year or a year and a half it took. So everyone's saying, why isn't the road repaved? And it was sort of, I wish, right? So there are the other factors of regulation that comes into things like that does slow stuff down.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would say I have a little bit different perspective than the other candidates up here. I think, the select board has a role as the executive branch of this town to make quick decisions and and I think there's a lot of items that are on the select board agenda that would be better served as having the town administrator handle, like approving head count or replacements and, serving an HR function there. So I think there's some stuff that clog the agendas when the select board should really be focusing on the big ticket, high level items. And I think in the past, I think the select board has done a better job, but in the past there's been a lot of, we need a committee to look at this. And I think it's the executive branch, and it's, we're putting these positions to make that call. Obviously, at the end of the day, town meeting gets a say, but I think we have a little bit of analysis by paralysis, and we need to start making some decisions faster. That's my recommendation.
Good evening. I think like everyone here, I want thoughtful leadership for our town. I want people in these positions of leadership who care about the town, who have integrity, and who learn, and maybe learn from past mistakes or regrets about positions or interactions. And I wonder if any of you'd be willing to share, as folks you've all had leadership positions here, something you've learned through those leadership positions in town that you're going to carry forward and maybe do differently. Good question.
I'll jump in. And one of the things I've learned in terms of some of my frustration when I was first elected to the select board not getting things done, it didn't take me too long to figure out that I had to actually get closer to the citizens on these kind of things. That was one of the reasons I started sitting out at the transfer station listening to people. And so that to me was a learning experience, and it's been very valuable for me for my 2 or 3 year terms that I've served. So that to me was an interesting learning exercise. So I plan to continue that.
I think for me, one of the reasons I'm running is because I learned, that in my role that I was serving in, I didn't have a lot of authority or power to make change. And that, the frustrations that I had or ideas I had that would kind of fall on deaf ears or couldn't move anywhere were things that, drove me to run for select board so that I would be in a better position and a better authority to make those changes and to affect the change that I wanted to do in this town.
That's a really good question, and I'm scanning back in my brain for all the mistakes I've made, of which there have been a considerable number. I think one of them was impatience with the fact that things moved slowly, and also not understanding that neighborhoods should really, in my opinion, have a large say in what's happening in those neighborhoods, and I feel that sometimes changes were proposed that didn't listen to the abutters. The abutters were not brought in. And my sense of it is, even from my own experience in my own neighborhood, I got involved with town politics because something was proposed that would have changed the character of my neighborhood. And that's how the whole thing started for me. And I think that bond that most people have with their home and their area is something that really should determine a lot of what this town looks like. I just have become very sensitive that residents know what they want around them, and it has to be heard. So.
Other questions? Microphone? Or Patty's first.
So, first of all, Marguerite and Sam and Andrew, I want want to thank you personally for your commitment to volunteerism in this community. It's hard to find, and it's really good that you guys are doing it along with many of the other people in this room. It's often a thankless commitment, so I
And
appreciate
back at you, Patty, because you volunteer for a lot.
Anyway, thank you. I want to talk about the budget and taxes for a second. I know we all remember last spring when we had not only a town meeting, but a vote just after that. And the representatives of the town meeting and the representatives that voted at that election overwhelmingly did not approve a new school that was promoted by the select board, the advisory, the building committee, etc. Many of the concerns of taxpayers were that we needed to consider needs and not just wants. We needed to consider the overall tax burden going out 20 plus years, in addition to many of these other issues that we're currently talking about, roads, roofs, et cetera, pensions, that are hitting us all at one time. And we had a lot of people in this community speaking up against the spending, against the commitment to the enormous school, $100 and whatever $million, $9 million, in addition to everything else that needed to be done. We had people complaining about the tax burden, the out of control in some people's words, spending that's going on, and that we need to consider everyone that lives in this community and how much or little they can afford. So given the fact, Marguerite, you're on the select board and you voted for a $100 million school, and Andrew, you were on advisory and the school building committee and voted in favor of that school. Sam, I don't know how you voted, but that's all private, don't tell me.
It's okay, I voted for it, actually.
Okay. So given the fact that you voted for the school and the majority of this town did not, how will you now, moving forward, represent those people? And if you could each give me one point that you would do as a select board member to control the spending or to control our taxes, that would be great.
Thank you, Patty. I mean, it's a tough one. I was on the Neary Building Committee. I did vote in favor of it, but if you actually go back and watch it, I was the 7th of 7 votes. I was actually kind of the sole holdout for a 2-grade school, but as the 7th vote, I wanted to keep it unanimous. I did think that the 4-grade school, in terms of bang for the buck and most, what you would get for the amount of money, was the wisest choice, but I did think that it was too expensive for this town to afford. Going forward, now I'm also on the new elementary school building committee, which our purview is a much smaller tax base and only a 2-grade option of renovation or large renovation or small renovation. So I think that fits better into, the amount of money we could afford from a tax perspective. In terms of how do we control everything that we want to do, I think our town government and how our staff is laid out. I think there's some efficiencies to be gained in terms of collaboration across the departments and how do we work together and how do we backfill some positions and try to make more efficient. I think technology serves a large purpose. Other towns are utilizing AI for things like the building department to pre-scan blueprints. Belchertown uses AI for their police department to redact body cam footage, as we talked about with the lieutenant. So instead of it being 3 hours, it takes 3 minutes. So I think there's functions like that we can either, try to find efficiencies in the town or to be able to do more with less. So I think things of that is where and then how do we shift the burden onto the commercial taxpayers? How do we get more of that in town? How do we shift money to the nonprofits, maybe through a stormwater usage fee, et cetera? So those are some of the ideas I have.
Can I just add a second part to my question?
Sure. Maybe everybody should answer the first part.
Well, it's really quick.
Okay.
Just, can you all make a commitment to listening to the majority of taxpayers that voted against this increase that we were going to see with the school and the vote last year? Because it was the majority of this town. Can you make a commitment to working with those people to move forward with their expectations?
Definitely will make a commitment to all the taxpayers of the town. We had a large turnout. It wasn't a full majority of the turnout. The majority of the people that voted for sure
That's what I said.
shot it down. But yeah, we still had, 1,200 out of the 6,000 registered voters. So I wish everybody was there. It would have given us a much better opinion on everybody. But certainly it was who voted definitely, that was well heard, that was not the project for this town, and we need to look at another one.
7,000 plus registered voters, disappointing turnout. Patty, I think the process actually made your point. The vote was overwhelming at town meeting and at the election, and we've changed. It's a new plan. There's a new committee, and we're going in a different direction. So I think that response has been made. And my plan for going forward, following Andrew's point, I think there are two dimensions. One is you got to manage spending. The other side is to manage revenue. And we need, I think, some economic development along Route 9 to draw revenue from people outside of Southborough. And so we're working on some ways to do that, and you can't solve the problem with one approach. You've got to do multiple approaches to do that. So I think we've got things underway to make that work over time. It's not something that happens quickly, but we're working on it. So.
Patty, all right. Okay, and I remember your signs. I would like just to make the distinction between, as a member of the select board, I supported bringing that school plan to the town meeting.
But you voted for it.
But you don't know
at
what my
town
clicker
meeting.
vote was. You do not know what my clicker vote was. No one knows but Jim Haggerty what my clicker vote was. So I just want to say that it's like with CPC. Sometimes they'll bring an article forward because they want it to go to town meeting, even if they'll vote to bring it forward, even if they don't individually support the article. So that was my rationale for that. I'm not going to say, no, don't bring it forward. I think it was the plan that was under
Nevertheless,
consideration.
Marguerite, the majority of voters at town meeting and at the election were not in favor
Correct.
of it. of
Good
the
data,
project.
and moving forward, that plan is completely off the table. It was too much money. It was too big a school. There it is. I think that's an example of town meeting really working well. It is slow, but it works well. And I think that's just like, that is gone. There is a stake through the heart of that
No, I
design.
understand that.
Yeah.
But I think my point was that in all the discussions that were taking place, it wasn't just a comment on the school per se, that building that was to be built. It was a comment on spending and taxes and the looming unaffordability of this town. Everybody has a dream of having wonderful schools, of course. Everybody wants wonderful schools. But we have to examine needs versus wants. I'm just asking for the commitment that you understand what those votes said, and that it isn't just about the school. It's about taxes and spending and controlling things and finding better ways to move forward.
Yes, it's about it's about people's voices. It's about the majority of people in this town absolutely did not want that school and voted that they, make it go away.
So what is the one
Patty,
thing that you
other
would
people
do?
are waiting to ask questions. Can we let them talk,
So
please?
she didn't answer them.
She answered 4 of them. Please let somebody else ask a question.
Sam,
I have a quick speaker's note for everybody who's participating, both the candidates and the audience. When you hold your mic away from your face, people cannot hear you in the back of the room. When you hold it closer, you will see the distinct difference. Don't be afraid of the mic. The mic is your friend. I don't want to single out the A+ star, but Andrew is doing a great job of holding the mic to his face because everyone can hear him. So just if we could keep that carry through. If the mic is too low on the audience side, you are welcome to bring it closer to your mouth. So Mr. Gittens is going to get us started because he knows how to do it. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. I'm Tom Gittens. I live at 73 Flag Road. I should pull this up.
did Sam answer?
Yep,
You answered, right?
I did, yeah.
Okay, yeah, he did.
I'll kneel down. Tip O'Neill said that all politics is local, so I'm going to be very local. I live on Flag Road. And tonight I've heard, and in many meetings I've heard a lot of conversation about we need to create a bigger commercial tax base. We need to improve our infrastructure. We need better roads, and we just voted to spend a bunch of money on Flag Road, where I live, although not actually in front of my house. We know that down in what I'm going to, from here forward, call Costco Corner, that the impact on Flag Road has got to be big, right? I mean, the idea that we're going to put Costco Plus in place in that corner where the only access is on Flag Road and Route 9 and 495. A lot of folks are coming up Flag Road. We recently voted to approve, and I support, putting Valvoline almost across the street from my house. They always said, well, everybody's going to come in off of Route 9 and go back on Route 9. I wasn't born last night. None of you were. We know that's not true. We know, and Sam, you remember well, the conversations that happened when the Capital Group wanted to put a bunch of stuff up on Park Central. That's not gone. Many of the people in this room, I sat in rooms, meetings with, and we talked about it, and we're concerned about Flag Road. We're going to improve it, but we're not going to improve it in a way that addresses this likely increase in traffic. We know that adding Costco Plus, Valvoline Plus is going to change my property value and the property value of other people down in Costco Corner. So what's my question? My question is, when Park Central ended up in court, we kicked the can down the road about how to handle Flag Road. What's best not only for Tom Gittins, though I'm very self-centered, but what's best for the town in terms of addressing this big change in terms of our commercial real estate, commercial tax base. How do we make it viable for businesses, but also not ruin the character of our town? I think somebody talked about that a few moments ago, and I'm right down in the heart of it all. So my question is, how do we start as select board? It starts with you, right? There's a law on the record, as I recall, from when Capital Group was going to build Park Central, that they weren't allowed to turn left onto Flag Road. I don't know if that's a legal law or just something we voted and it passed, and we'll see it get challenged in court going forward. But it's not a real solution to all of the Costco Corner. So how are you going to, when are you going to start, or will you start to look at what's the real solution for Flag Road going forward, and how do we do it in a way that is not only reasonable, but proactive? And then I also just want to say, I don't know you, but I don't agree with your interpretation of the vote from the Neary School project, so I just would say, not everybody thinks the way that she does. I didn't like that plan, I voted against it, but it doesn't.
Could we keep it to questions for the
I'm sorry, I
candidates?
just want to
Thank you.
express it, Peter, thank you.
I'm happy to. I'll take a shot at that, Tom, thank you. Not an easy answer. I think part of the Costco process is they've got to do a traffic study, which they're going to work on shortly here, and we'll see what that says. You may recall, I think it was 2015, the select board voted to close Flag Road at the end if Park Central was going to actually have access to Flag Road, which it looked like it was at the time. I don't think that's likely now. But also conversation was around making Flag Road one way to limit access into the neighborhood there. And I think for me at least, all those things are still on the table potentially, depending on how things shake out. So I think we have some ways of dealing with it. But again, it's hard to know until you do the traffic studies, until you start seeing what the impact there is. But I do agree with you that it's important to protect the traffic flow through the neighborhoods. Clearly, Flag Road is a safety hazard today in terms of the small, narrow, windy road, and people walking and pushing strollers along that road. So I think we have an obligation to protect that, and I don't have a plan for that, but I'm willing to consider a variety of options for it.
Yes, certainly thank you for the question. I mean, I live on Oak Hill, and that's the largest truck route in town, so I'm sympathetic to the increased traffic. I think getting the truck exclusion on Flag Road was a huge start. I think, to Sam's point, we need to assess what the traffic studies are going to come up, and I think we need to be actively monitoring Flag and some of the surrounding roads in terms of what traffic is going to be coming in. Possibly putting up traffic cameras or license plate readers or something along those lines so that we know actively, we don't have to just do a traffic study once every 2 years, so we know, we have good data to understand what's going on. And then I think we need to be ready if it gets too busy to as Sam said, maybe make it a one-way or expand the road width-wise, which obviously would have a huge impact in costs because that's not an easy road to do. But I think we need to leave everything on the table and be cognizant of what the impact's going to be.
Sorry to interrupt, but isn't Costco on the other side of Route 9?
Yes, yeah, but people can do a loop around there and come
Well,
on.
they have to go either down to Crystal Pond or loop on 495.
Yeah, right,
on
yeah.
Flag.
But people do crazy things to get to places, unfortunately.
Okay.
I would say that your question goes again to the issue of neighborhoods and protecting our neighborhoods. And at the risk of sounding like a total heretic, I question the assumption that more development is going to be good for the town. I think some of the small businesses that are on Route 9 now have a footprint that are so small that what they're paying for real estate taxes is like $15,000 or $20,000 a year. That's not a lot of square footage. I know of one, and it's bringing in traffic and it's making the neighborhood cluttery. So I'm just questioning the assumption is more and more business really going to give us the town that we want? Or are there other ways to decide? One, I question how much revenue comes in from a lot of it. And two, I question, is it really worth it if you've got someplace with the lights on all night over a car dealership that's shining over your house, that's really what you want, so that you're paying $500 a year less in real estate taxes. I think we really need to have the conversation of what do we want this town to look like. That's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Thank you. Next person.
Hello. So town meeting is our primary instrument of local democracy, but turnout and participation remain persistent challenges, and the format itself may advantage some residents over the others. Do you think our current structure is working? And what specific changes, if any, would you make to increase engagement and make participation more equitable?
I'll take a shot at that. I agree, it's pathetic in terms of turnout. And unfortunately, we've made a variety of efforts over the years to improve that, and the only real surefire thing is you got a big project like the Neary School. I remember long ago we had the high school question, are we going to build a regional school, et cetera. That was like 1,500 people or something, a huge turnout. The other thing that's going on is we actually, part of the Metropolitan Area Planning Council regional group, Metro West Regional Group, we got a grant from them to do a community engagement study, which is ongoing now. And so we, Wellesley, and I think 2 other towns, I can't remember which ones, were awarded that grant. They've got a team working with Vanessa Hale locally here to find ways to get more engagement with community members about things like town meeting and other town issues. So I don't think there's any magic answer there, but I think we need to keep working at it. And I think we need to do a better job with town website, for example, communicating with people. We've got some email information from people. A lot of people don't want to give the town their email addresses, and so you've got some ways to improve that. Maybe we improve our social media connections that way as well. I think it's an ongoing struggle, and it's worth the effort to try to build up participation, because it's our money collectively that we're spending, and I'm surprised that more people aren't watching that more closely. But sadly, there's no easy answer, I'm afraid.
I think, yeah, definitely having 100 80 people deciding the largest bond issuance we've ever done in town is not, an ideal situation. I think there's things that can be done. I think that the governance committee or whether the select board was trying to do in terms of, do we look at maybe a representative town meeting or other, factors like that. Hopefully the state will start to allow in the future some remote participation or similar things. I think that would help a lot. I think we had done it in the past for the Neary vote, but I think, on town meeting days, all town facilities, including the field, should be closed. I remember my wife couldn't make it because my 4-year-old had soccer that morning and the fields were busy and the parking was a nightmare. I think that the town should set a policy that town buildings are closed on town meeting days. Another thought I had in the past, which towns had done when we had big snowstorms years ago, is they actually had Saturday classes to make up for days. Maybe we could convince the school committee to have a town meeting, have the school open on Saturday, and all the parents would have the Saturday or something like that. But just kind of out of the box thinking in terms of how do we get more people. Obviously the parents are difficult, and it's tough. We try weeknights, we try weekends. We haven't seemed to really get the right mix of when we're going to do it and how we're going to do it to get the best participation. But those are some thoughts.
There is no good day to hold a town meeting. The weekend's wrong, the weeknights are wrong. It's very frustrating. And I had a conversation recently with a younger resident who wasn't aware that the town meeting controls what the tax rate is. And that's pretty basic information, and yet it's still hard to get there. I look at Framingham, they have a sort of half and half. They have a town government where they have representatives from different areas who come together, which works for them. They're much bigger. Marlborough has a mayor and a city council. That frequently leaves neighborhoods vulnerable. If you notice the amount of building that's going on in Marlborough, sometimes the whole neighborhood gets wiped, and here's this and that. So it's an issue of town meeting, very old form. They don't have it in the south of the United States. They have county government, which means there's strip malls all over everything because a town can't control what gets built in it. So it's kind of the best of a bad bunch, I think. And again, I got involved with it because my neighborhood had an issue, and I think a lot of people do, or it's the schools or something. So I can't answer your question. All I can say is I'm glad we don't have a mayor. I'm glad we don't have a county government. I don't think representative would work. We're too small. So I just see the people who attend are kind of self-selecting for being our senators. And I have no idea where to go with this, but there we are. I just think we sort of limp along with a town meeting that more people wish they could go to or knew about it. That's not really a solution, but I think it's a decision to stay with a form that protects us better. Anyway, sorry, it's sort of a terrible answer, but.
Does anyone else have a question? Yes. Sorry, I'm the one doing all the feedback here, sorry.
Hi, I'm Paul Desmond. I'm chair of the Affordable Housing Trust here in town. Sam, I was glad to hear you make mention of that. We are a fairly newly revised body, I guess. And as Sam mentioned, we have about $1 million to play with. And over the course of the last year or so, it's become clear that'll get us maybe 3 or 4 units if the stars align. And beyond that, discussions that we've had with various experts indicate you got to have town support to do anything bigger. And, some of us have been talking about multifamily development of, say, 20 units for the sake of argument. And for something like that, you need A, the land, and then B, commitment from the town of maybe $20,000 per unit. And then you have to work with various nonprofits and try to go after various state and federal grants, and it's a long and drawn out process. But again, it starts with that town support. So I guess you can consider this my effort to start drumming up some town support. And I'd like to hear from each of you, what's your level of concern about affordable housing in town? And I know, given all our other priorities, is this something you see the town investing in? Are you willing to invest in it? Thanks.
I can I can say, yes, I think affordable housing is something that a lot of people support in principle, but don't really know what they're going to get when it ends up being affordable housing. Will it be somebody from another area of the state? Will it be a lottery that's somebody in town? Will it be a town employee who needs housing, and on and on and on? I would like to see the Affordable Housing Trust and the Housing Authority have some conversations and see what they can brainstorm together.
Paul, I'll plead guilty to having been a member of the Affordable Housing Trust when we did nothing for a while when I was on the select board, sadly. And I think that there are some things we can do. I think we did look at one point for town land that we own that we could contribute to a development project. There's surprisingly little of that, as a matter of fact, but there are a few places, and I would certainly support donating land to prime the pump for a developer to come in and build some affordable housing. The other part of this that I think is often overlooked is the state's definition of affordable housing is an $80,000 AMI income level. And that, in this day and age, is not very effective in terms of serving people that I think need served there. And I think you need to find ways to lower that threshold so you can build housing that somebody with $50,000, $60,000 AMI can afford to live there. And that, again, is often new families coming into town, young families, seniors trying to downsize, and so forth. And so there are ways to do that. We've actually talked with developers saying that we might take some of that money in the trust and get them to agree to build units that were available to lower income people for a flat single fee that would then make that unit available in perpetuity. And we haven't gotten any of those deals yet, but people have talked to us about it at least. So I think you got to work all sorts of angles on that one to find ways to leverage that money in reasonable ways. We've had developers that are easier to work with who I think had some interesting conversations with us. I don't think we're likely to get any huge commercial developers to come in and do much with us at this point, unfortunately, in terms of affordable housing. But again, I have great confidence that in your committee, as it's been reconstituted, has an exceptional set of skills there, contacts to know what's going on in the state, and to find those kind of opportunities. And I would certainly support finding ways to throw what the town can into the pot to start those buildings. I think it's fair to say that we haven't built anything in 15 or 20 years, something like that. And we've been collecting money through the CPC for that, which I think is a shame. So it's past time to get it, make that happen. I think this committee is working hard to make that happen. So thank you.
I would say I certainly support it. I mean, I sat on the South Union Affordable Housing Committee before it was finished, and while I don't have an official role in it, I certainly have over the years have sent ideas to Al and Ellen and Doug and other things. I think we should certainly apply as part of this one-stop process for a community catalyst fund for the MBTA communities. I think there's some land parcels in town that would be good acquisitions for that. So always open to ideas, always happy to do that. I was a big proponent of the ADU bylaw, and I think that'll maybe not be affordable, but it brings up more affordable type units to this town, so I'm certainly supportive of that.
Hi, thank you. So there are, for better or worse, a lot of communities across the state facing similar financial questions and challenges coming up with the changes in state aid and federal support, and having to make some really difficult decisions about closing libraries and other town assets and cutting staff. So I think my question is, what can we learn from those other communities who are facing these other challenges, and kind of how do you apply some of those lessons to what Southborough is starting to face?
Yeah, I certainly see the towns that have the failed overrides and all the kind of crazy things that they have to do in order to get back to where they are. I think the first thing we need to do is try everything in our power to avoid an override. Let's get the town as efficient as possible. I think we want to keep all our fantastic staff, but we think we need to make sure that they're all doing exactly what they need to do as efficiently as possible, streamlining operations and inserting technology where we can, because one of the concerns I have is that for every employee we have, the OPEB and retirement and pension obligation is so large with how early you can start collecting it and how long people are living these years and the cost of health care, that when we approve things at town meeting, we don't really look into the multiple millions of dollars that we will have to spend over the life of an employee. So I think we need to be very conscious of all the costs when we look at things. And I think, as we go into looking at override, we need to be very ready on where we can make cuts that aren't going to affect town services, or town services that aren't, are maybe not utilized as much, and we need to have data around it. Everything needs to be data driven. We need to know how often things are used, how many times people are doing certain things, how often equipment's being used, and whether or not it makes sense to sell it. So I think we need to start to collect that information prior to coming to the town and just blanket asking for a check to get us back over the Prop 2.5 limit. I think we really need to come with a good story, a good plan if we don't, and basically show the town that we're doing everything in our power to be using the tax dollars as efficiently and effectively as possible and good stewards for their money.
And I'll follow up on that. I think that I agree with Andrew's points. I think we are actually doing a number of things to get more distance for each dollar that we spend here. For example, I think of a couple of regionalization issues. Our fire department is actually talking with Westborough now to regionalize coverage there. And again, share resources. They already do that in a lot of ways, but they're looking at enhancing that. I mentioned the Regional Communications Center to, again, improve safety and maybe save some money there. And again, at a variety of places, I think we're using more what I think of as modern management techniques to get more value from each tax dollar. But there's a limit to what you can do there, and so I think you got to work both the cost side as well as the revenue side, where I come back to the development issue. I know Ms. Landry has a different view of that than I do, but I think that you can't avoid looking at both sides of the equation there and trying to find every tool you can to avoid the pressures that we're seeing in some of these other places. And frankly, I think that we've got a good management team in place today. I mean, as I talk to people in other towns, I'm on some regional boards. I'm stunned by some of the things I hear that go on in places out there. And I'm grateful that we're not perfect, but things could be a lot worse. And I think we got to keep trying every opportunity we find to improve efficiency, and both in terms of the cost side as well as look for revenue opportunities. So, no easy answers. Thank you.
We do have one very successful regionalization, which is the high school, which people don't even think of it anymore as being the two towns joining. And I think the fire department is looking at possibilities of combining with Westborough, since with mutual aid, the trucks are going out all the time anyway. I think that's an important conversation to have, and I think department heads should sit down with the department heads in our surrounding towns. I know Youth and Families has some collaboratives in Northborough and also Westborough that are good, and I think we should look at more of those for possibilities. The library, I don't know if we could go regional on the library. I don't know. But
Well, we sort of have. There's the regional book share.
yes, there's the CW Mars, yes, which costs us a chunk of change every year, we must say, but it's really worth it. But it's a good question.
We seem to have come to a, oh, did you have a question?
A very simple one. Do you want me to go?
Please.
Okay. Sorry, like everybody's ready to leave and I'm putting one more in, but this might have been answered earlier. Sorry, I was a little bit late. But my question is more of a personal philosophy statement question. So I just wonder, like in the role of a select board member, what do you see yourself as first? Like, is it nerd of municipal law first, politician first, like community engagement proponent first, or like educator first? Like, what do you see yourself as your core identity as a select board member? Yeah, so like one of those or something else that you come up with. That's my
Those are all
question.
good options. I think with me, it's listening to people, and I think sometimes things don't do well at town meeting because the conversation beforehand was not adequate. And so I think a lot of it is, people know how they want to live in this town. It's important to listen to that, so.
My one-word answer is manager. I spent the last several decades doing that, and I think it's an important function in the town, and not, you don't necessarily want everybody on the select board with the same background, but I think I offer some considerable strength in that department. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say management, like Sam, but probably more change agent. So how do we drive change in this town, do things a little bit differently, look to optimize, and there's a lot of, well, we used to do it that way, and I think there's a lot of things that we can do better.
You all should be like professional problem solvers. But I appreciate that. Thank you.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I think we've reached a natural conclusion. I want to thank the candidates for subjecting themselves to.
Thank you, Jenna.